My people of this country and we're under attack. They banning us, they cancel us for speaking the facts. If you man enough.
This is the Patriots Prayer Podcast. It's a tremendous show, one of the greatest shows in the history of the world.
This is Bryson Gray, and you are watching the Patriots Prayer.
PTN, you're doing the right thing.
On the Patriots Prayer Network. Thank you all.
PPN on your bumper.
I'm Tom McDonald. This is the Patriot Prayers Network. Check it out. Lots of good TV. Lots of cool people. Tune in. Keep it locked.
I'm the white boy with the middle fingers in the air, dog. We don't give a what. 100 white boys gonna hold me down anywhere, dog. We think that you suck. My Patriots, the craziest. They ain't afraid of breaking fists on faces. If you really wanna taste of this, no safety tip. The same mistake and spray the clip. I pray you miss, cause if you don't, they gon' go wacko. Automatic gun smoke like tobacco. Never hit a lady, but it's pretty hard to tell if you're a girl or a they, them. There's these, that, those. I ain't never gonna take a knee for the anthem. Smack them. I don't give a damn, can't stand them. Gang full of randoms. Fan with a handgun. Run up in your mansion, leave it all abandoned. I was raised to be brave to the grave. United States, we love the country that they've been corrupting. Go woke and go broker if you ain't obeyed. My people of this country and we're under attack. They banning us, they cancel us for speaking the facts. If you man enough, come stand with us, take USA back. And every time we pull up, all you're gonna see is American flags. American flags. American flags. And every time we pull up, all you...
Welcome, fellow Patriots, on this beautiful Sunday. I'm from Washington State. I'm the native Patriot. Thank you for joining me today, and please share this podcast if you can. It is Sunday, June 1st, formerly known as Pride Month, but now known as Hetero Awesomeness Month. If you guys don't know, I'm an ambassador for Hetero Awesomeness Incorporated, and we are set out to change this unfortunate month that we've been experiencing the past couple of years of celebration of pride. And today I have someone with me who went through 17 years of gender affirming care, grew up in Washington State, and has since realized the depravity and the falsehoods that were being peddled to him. His name is Ari. He is an advocate from Seattle, Washington, now is one of the voices against the transitioning of young minors and young teens alike. So I'm honored today to introduce Ari here, and I'm very thankful for him to come on and speak with me about this very, very important topic. If you guys don't know, Washington State has specifically been passing laws targeting children to transition from a young age, emboldening the groomers and hiding them behind law, and leaving no room or protections for the children themselves, keeping parents out of it. So today I would like to discuss Ari's journey and how he realized that the falsehoods that were being peddled to him are not truth, not reality, and how we can, as a society, go back to some kind of normalcy in acknowledging reality, acknowledging God's design, and showing just what we can do moving forward. So Ari, thank you for joining me today. I really, really appreciate you coming on this podcast. I know that as of late, you have been receiving threats, you've been doxxed, you've been harassed in many, many ways just for speaking out in the way that you did and telling your life story. So if you can, please introduce yourself.
Hey, can you hear me?
I certainly can.
Transphobe01 on Twitter. I'm a detransitioner. I medicalized 17 years ago as a late teenager. I actually moved to this state about 8 years ago. And I realized that it was all a lie about 8 months ago. I'm 16 years and some change into a transition. I'm married. I have a husband. I'm gay. And I realized that I had been fed a spoonful of lies as a confused teenager by the LGBT Center.
There's a lot to unpack there. I mean, 17 or I guess 16 and some change years is a long time to go through this. At what age did you first kind of get introduced into this, and where you were led down a road that you eventually realized was false?
I experienced CSA, childhood sexual assault, between the ages of 4 to 12 for about 8 years. And when I was on my own at 17, I started exploring feelings I had about my body and about my sexuality at an LGBT center. And they taught me the framework of gender as an explanation for how I felt about myself.
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to say I'm sorry that you had to experience that. I know that, I mean, it's never easy to kind of move on from something as horrific as that. And this is one of the things that we're fighting against is exposing child predators, not just in grooming, but in actual sexual assault that have kind of been hidden in this movement of the LGBTQAI2 plus movement. It seems like they have a bad habit of not trimming the grass and allowing the snakes to just continue hiding in the movement.
Well, and here's the thing. I know you talked about Pride Month earlier when we had a conversation. Like the LGBTQIA alphabet soup movement has been invaded and co-opted in many different ways. And it's veered away from what it was, which was a small movement to fight for basic civil rights. The ability to, you know, participate in society as a normal person despite being gay. And unfortunately, like how I came to this position of realizing I was lied to really ties into what happened to the alphabet soup community. And it goes very far back if you want to go into it.
Yes, absolutely. I want you to be able to explain your story today and kind of expose some of the I guess some of the ways that they're able to target vulnerable young adults or even young children in that aspect. And so that way we can kind of build up our walls and build up some defenses against this kind of predatory behavior that is shown, because it comes off in a lot of ways as compassion, and they're trying to help out the youth, but in a lot of ways it's more predatory than people actually understand.
Oh, it's much more predatory than people realize. Let me go into it. So I'm going to start with what we have today as I see it, and then I'm going to go back to how we got here. Does that work for you?
Yes,
What
absolutely.
we have today, what I went through, is teaching people a framework of GD, gender dysphoria, and gender identity as a way of interpreting our problems. And so you can feel disconnected from your body because you were hurt, like how I was. You can feel disconnected from your body because you're autistic. There's a lot of different reasons you can grow up and feel very disconnected from your body. You can feel like you don't belong. You could be an effeminate man, and society wants men to be men, right? And so you could develop a complex around that, or you could be a tomboy and you just didn't have enough love and support. People saying, hey, you can like going to play softball and you can want to wear boots and jeans, and that's fine. You're still a girl. You can develop complexes that lead to you having serious issues with who you are as a person, identity issues. And what they do is they take those issues, and there's a whole bunch of reasons people feel this way, and they summarize it in this blanket diagnosis called gender dysphoria. And when they give you that framework to interpret your problems, like in my case, for example, I had terrible issues with my body. I had PTSD. I had issues with how I felt about men, and interpreting all of that through a dysphoria, a gender lens, instead of actually treating the causes of those problems, I blamed those problems on gender souls and having a woman's brain and things like that that aren't real. And so I started, because they had told me that this was the problem, I started thinking, well, the solution is to transition. That's the solution that they gave me. They didn't give me another solution. They gave me the solution of transition. So once you adopt this framework, you're accepting some things. You're accepting that your problems are being caused by gender. And you're accepting that the solution is to transition to whatever extent that you feel you need to. And, generally, traditionally, this has been across sex. A man would want to be a woman to run away from being a man, or a woman would want to be a man to run away from being a woman. When you start to compare yourself to the opposite sex, you give yourself issues. right? Like it's just
It
like
would make
women.
sense. It would make a lot of sense because men and women, generally speaking, there's a lot of similarities between the two. I mean, obviously we're the same species, but especially during a time such as puberty and young adolescence, where your body physically and hormonally are going through drastic changes. Your brain isn't even close to being developed. I mean, that takes until you're about 25 years old until your brain is fully developed. So there's years of drastic changes physically, hormonally, emotionally, and that seems to be the time where it's really targeted to instead of saying to kids that, hey, you're going to go through a lot of changes, you don't even know who you are yet, they give you this solution saying the reason you're feeling this way, even though biologically it is just puberty, it is normal that everybody goes through something like this, instead of saying that you will eventually find out who you are if you embrace the physical changes and try to grow into who you're supposed to be, they say those changes aren't normal, and here's this, we have the solution for you as long as you just go down this road of gender affirming care. We have all these adults, we have all these treatments, we have all of these options, and we're going to take care of you. It is a way that predators kind of entrap young adolescents in this kind of mindset, because obviously those changes are drastic that they're going for, and if they don't have, or if they're vulnerable in a certain way, whether it be through CSA or unsupportive parents, they're going to latch on to these figures who offer them solutions in which problems that aren't really problems that they have any kind of solution to. It's just a way to entrap them into this ideology.
They give you a symptom. The symptom is gender dysphoria, and they don't help you find why you're experiencing that. And there's a lot of reasons for why people experience that. And then once you have this framework, you're comparing yourself to the unobtainable. You're comparing yourself to something that's unachievable. It's just like the way women are impacted by like the Kardashians and the constant imagery of like unobtainable female figures that are photoshopped to oblivion, don't even look like real women. Same thing can happen to men who are growing up, right? So you take that and you lock it in. You're now comparing yourself to the opposite sex. That's going to cause obsession. You're going to nitpick your own body. And that's what a lot of people experience. That's why a lot of detransitioners say when they stopped doing that, they cured the dysphoria because they stopped cross-sex ideating, which was causing a socially indoctrinated form of dysphoria. Now, this is where it gets really dark, right? Because I said we were going to describe what's going on now and then go back to how we got here, right? This is how we got here. In the 1920s, we were experiencing the rise of fascism in Europe. In Italy and Germany, things were getting really dark. It was already a dark place in the 1920s to be gay, right? It was not an approved of thing. You have some gay men who are very effeminate. You have some gay women who are very masculine. The Butch Dykes and the Flamers. I'm a Flamer. Like that's normal. We know about these people. In the 1920s, during the rise of fascism, these people literally could not exist. They were put in concentration camps or they were put in mental institutions, right? And there was a guy named Magnus Hirschfeld. He was a gay man. He was a little bit of a flaming crossy. He could not exist and be himself at all. And there were other academics who were studying this. And back then they called homosexuality sexual inversion. These people thought that being gay was the result of having sexual inversion. You had elements of you that just weren't aligned the way men were supposed to be. So they already thought that being gay was something to do with, being wrong as a man, and being somehow more like a woman as a man. So to them, it was this natural thought, well, we'll make the effeminate gay men look like masculine women. We'll make the masculine women look like effeminate men, and then they can exist. So that's where the surgeries and the actual medical process started, right? But here's where it ended up. In the 1950s, after World War II, a man came back from World War II named Christine Jorgensen. It hit national news. World War II veteran changed sexes in Europe. At the time, You couldn't get these surgeries in America because Christian values prevented you from cutting open a healthy body for no reason. You couldn't cut open a healthy body for mental health issues. You had to treat the mind, not the body, for the mind, which makes sense, right? We don't give liposuction to anorexics who think they're fat, but really they're starving themselves to death, right? So
Yeah.
why would we give surgery to men who think that they're women? But we did. We did. And when we saw that, when that hit national news, there was another group of men who have always wanted to be women. They go all the way back to ancient Greece, thousands of years, and that's autogynephiles. And autogynephilia is a paraphilia. It's men who are sexually aroused by the idea of themselves as women. Anybody who's over 50 remembers the transvestites in the 80s, like the men wearing the stockings and the latex suits.
Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Rocky Horror Picture Show, exactly. Right. So we remember this paraphilia, but this paraphilia has been written out now. It doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. Yeah. And the truth is that this paraphilia actually accounts for somewhere between 80 to 90% of men who end up this way. There's other bits, people who have been traumatized, like, people who are gay and have different mental health issues. But for the most part, it's AGP. And the reason we have this system today is because over decades, effort has been put in to build this framework in order to hide this paraphilia and make society just forget that this is a thing. In the 1950s, when that man came back from World War II, the surgeon who did that to him got thousands of letters. And a couple were from gay men trying to run away from being gay men. A couple were from lesbians who wanted to marry their wives and live as men so they could escape oppression. And the rest were all men with this erotic fantasy of being a woman. So we started seeing a lot of these men transition. And they were the original trans people, the ones that existed between the 50s and the 80s. And those men were unhappy because they transitioned later in life. They were ugly, they were tall, they were not as pretty as they wanted to be. So they organized in the 80s and the 90s around gender and gender identity. And they lobbied in the 90s in Texas to give gender identity civil rights protections. And then the T was tacked on to the LGB. The moment we tacked that T onto the LGB, we were giving those protections that we wrote for sexual orientations to a paraphilia. And this is how we open the gate to all other paraphilias gaining civil rights protections. And now you see the worst paraphilia known to man, right? Lobbying to reframe itself as MAPS, minor attracted people, trying to tack itself onto the LGBT community. You see people like Tim Walz lobbying to remove elements of their safety law in order to open up the law to public lawsuits so MAPS could sue based on sexual orientation protections. The Democratic Party, and being co-opted by the alphabet soup, has basically bought hook, line, and sinker into giving paraphilia civil rights. And it started with AGP, and next it's MAPS. That's what you're feeling. That's what you're touching on.
Have you heard of John Money?
Yeah, of course. I got his book right here. Hang on. John Money.
Oh, okay.
On sexualism and sex reassignment. Richard Green. So he performed some experiments on some twins who had a botched circumcision, and he tried to transition them to get them to live as women. And Bruce killed himself at like 38, and David killed himself at like 36. They're called the Reimer twins, and they took two men with botched circumcisions, and they did what they did to me to those boys. Both of them killed themselves a few years older than I am now. That's human experimentation. And that's what it's always been.
Yes, and it's no different than what they're doing today. But back then, for some reason, I mean, he was propped up as this great figure who successfully was able to transition kids. And I think what you were describing as far as the LGB movement, that is based in reality, that there's men and women, and that sometimes for whatever reason they will have different sexual preferences. Once the T was added on to that, then it just became all about this a mental state in which the way that you see the world. And I feel like for quite a while, if I remember correctly, I know that they tried to change this, but the LGBTQ, the Q on there for a while was questioning, or it at least was used as questioning. It was basically, they did change it. I don't know what it is now.
It's queer now.
It's queer, okay.
Yeah, it's queer now.
But for a while, it was almost like a directive, like and for questioning. So it tried to be more inclusive to people who weren't yet fully on board with the movement,
Mm-hmm.
and so they were just trying. It was right when they were trying to expand and continue growing. And so it was just one of those cases where it was almost like a directive in how to get more people into this, and they figured out that a lot of adults don't go along with this. And that their best demographic to target is children who are questioning their ideology or the way that they see the world.
Well, that's the thing. Gender is a lens through which you interpret the world. It's a lens based on sexism. It's a lens based on tying just different things to different sexes, and basically it's almost like reverse traditionalism. You know, it's like the reverse of saying, well, all the women need to be in bonnets and long skirts and all the men need to be in jeans and going to war. It's the same thing. It's saying, well, like, you like pink, so you're not a normal boy. You know, maybe you're a girl because you like pink.
Which is terrifying, by the way.
It's a terrible way to look at the world, too. It's a very warped way to look at the world. We moved past this. We moved past this when I was younger. You know, we really did. We
thought we did.
Yeah, well, I thought we did, but then trans took over, and it took us all the way back to like the 1950s with this way of looking at the world. And when you look at the world this way, and you're different, and you don't line up with the averages, it makes sense. And then you get indoctrinated into thinking that you are supposed to be a girl or that you are supposed to be a boy.
Well, and nowadays, especially, it is really easy to believe that you don't line up with the averages because of the pervasiveness of the online social media sphere. What it never feels like you're good enough. I mean, that was the problem with Instagram and Facebook initially coming, like, rising to power, right? Is that everybody who was popular, it showed like this out of reach life that you can never achieve. They're all driving Lambos. They're all, perfectly in great shape, and they flaunt their money and they flaunt their mansions and all of this stuff that is never achievable. And they figured out that, oh my gosh, this is actually destroying the self-esteem of young people, whether it be men or women, because of this constant, like, it's I forget what it's called, but it's basically like when you look at social media profiles, it feels like they're your neighbor. And so you can feel ostracized while being completely normal or even above average in your status where you are.
They do the same thing with trans stuff. If you look at Hunter Schafer is pitched as this perfect transitioner because he transitioned at like 16, right?
I don't know who that is. No offense.
Hunter Schafer is a famous actor. He's a trans-identified male. He medicalized at like 16 or 17. The average image that they show the world of Hunter Schafer is heavily photoshopped. They use angling to make his waistline look like a woman's waistline. They position the cameras top down to make him seem smaller. They do all kinds of things to prevent this image of a man who's been heavily modified to look ish, like a gynoandromorph, like a mix between a woman and a man, because none of them actually look like women. Nothing can make that happen, and so it's all Photoshop, it's angling, it's editing, and they do this constantly. They present this image like transition is this hyper successful thing, and it's not. It's not hyper successful. Like even Blair White. I went to meet Blair White in person. I like Blair White. I wish he would use the men's restrooms. But other than that, I'm not really super bothered by Blair White. I do have an issue with men being let into female spaces. But like, I like Blair. But at the same time, without the angling and the makeup, like it's just not happening, hun. It's just not. He's had like so much plastic surgery. It doesn't come together into a woman, and nothing will make a man come together into a woman. But they like to create this image like it works, and it doesn't work.
That's exactly one of the main points that I like to discuss, is that throughout human history, there has never been a successful transition from a man to a woman or a woman to a man. There has not been one.
Can't do it.
Yeah, it is impossible. It's never happened, not once. There are traits that have been temporarily successfully passing as the other gender, like as you say, like people like Blair White and the Schaefer person. Yeah, what was the name?
Hunter Schaefer.
Hunter Schaefer. Okay.
Yeah, like with some editing and some makeup and some angling, like you can make a man look like a woman, but not with the naked eye.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the most important points, because personally, I see the people who buy into this ideology as victims. The people who are perpetrating this onto young folk are the enemy. Like when folks say that like I hate trans people, I don't hate trans people. I see them in a lot of ways as victims of an ideology that is destroying them and their future, their legacy. Their entire bloodline is being destroyed, especially since the target now is 13-year-olds in Washington State can now have and access gender affirming care without parental knowledge or consent. They can become sterilized. They can have access to hormonal treatments that'll make them have brittle bones, cancer.
They regret it either. My friend Layla Jane had a double mastectomy at 13 years old. She realized it was a mistake 4 years later. At 17, she tried to sue. It fell on statute of limitation. She's 20 years old right now, and she just found out that it's a statute of limitations and she can't get justice. Literally 20 years old. Literally. She's got a
How? Her
right
brain's
now.
not even fully developed yet. She can't even go out and buy cigarettes.
They cut her breast off at 13.
Wow.
And she had an ultrasound done. Like a lot of these girls, when they go in for the double mastectomy, they don't remove everything. And there's cases, like you can't say for sure it's going to happen, but like my friend Prisha has talked about her case. She got pregnant after detransition. There were parts of her breast that weren't removed, but there were no ducts, so milk developed, but there was nowhere for it to go. So she was in agony. She was in agony. And, like there's another point I'd like to make. So we talked about being gay, being different from being trans. And there's some really good IRL examples of this, right? One, did you know that gay penguins exist? That they are homosexual? That they mate for life? And they die a homosexual life? Interesting fact, right? But another really interesting thing that directly contrasts with trans. So when you get old and you get dementia, you're still gay. When you lose your whole mind and everything's gone, if you're a man who likes men, you're still a man who likes men. You'll still be that crotchety old guy that's like, oh, he's kind of hot, And if you like women and you get dementia, you're 90 years old, you're still going to be like, But if you get dementia, you know what you lose? Your gender identity. And now you're running around as a 90-year-old man with tits and your dick removed, and you're going, what happened to my dick? Why is my dick gone? I'm a man. And you don't remember that you thought you were a woman because it's all in your head. There's a very real, tangible evidence that this is just in people's heads, that it is not innate, that it is not something like being gay. It should not be tied to the LGBT at all. The moment we did this, we started basically mass medicalizing people who are mentally ill under the guise of it's innate, which is so unethical. But we also gave a paraphilia civil rights protections.
Yeah,
and
often
that's the first step to MAPS coming back, and they're taking advantage of it very publicly.
One of the, I have some family who are like running the Antifa crowd, right? And I've told them that like somebody like me, a patriot, loves this nation, pretty much anti-government. Like even though I supported Trump, like for the most part, I don't trust the government. I don't like them. I don't believe that they have our best interests in mind. You know, you go back, you can listen to a Ronald Reagan speech from 50 years ago now, and they're talking about the same few talking points that they argue today. They're talking about abortion, and they're talking about closing the border. They're talking about the budget. It is the same thing, but meanwhile, the American people have been set with $36+ trillion in debt, and they've gotten rich off of us. But I've argued to them that Antifa and somebody like me are like this close to being on the same side, except for the fact in the way that Antifa allows a diversity of tactics, right? They have no way to vet who they partner with, and they're just all accepting all the time. And so what happens in that kind of a movement is the ones who are seeking power, maybe even malevolently, are the ones who will be at the front and leading the charge. And mob mentality is real. So whether or not you have good intentions or not, if you are just an average lefty and you go to like an Antifa rally, you will find yourself kind of being predatory towards someone like, I know you attended this Christian event this last weekend, or the protest at the mayor's house, at least, or not the mayor's house,
City Hall.
the City Hall. Yes.
Yeah, City Hall in Seattle.
And there were some scenes that came out of that, which I found incredibly disturbing. And I wondered what kind of a person it would take to actually circle. I actually want to show this up on screen here,
Okay.
because this to me is an important kind of symbolism of how people will fall into, good intentions or not, how they will fall into being the bad guy. Okay. So here we have, it is a random mom holding her child, and you can see down at the waist, down at the middle here, another young child. And she was trying to get into this event. So she was surrounded and entrapped by these people who, by their accounts, would say that they have good intentions. But since there is no way to vet the Antifa types, I kind of want to turn the sound down, and you guys can just see the visual here. Like the child in her arms is terrified. The child down at her waist is also terrified. Thankfully, they didn't get beaten. They didn't get hurt. But this is mentally like very, very difficult on people to get stopped, harassed, and yelled at like they are bad people just for trying to attend a rally like this. Look at the kid right now. He's bawling his eyes out because he is terrified. So if you find yourself circling a random innocent mother and yelling it at her in a mob, you're the bad guy.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you had good intentions, and if you had bad experiences with Christians, you're the bad guy if you're the one entrapping a random innocent woman and terrifying her and her kids. There's no reality which this is a good thing to do. And unfortunately, it seems like at events like this, the predatory nature that has been allowed into the Antifa groups take charge, and then everybody else just kind of follows and assumes they've dehumanized Christians in a way that this is acceptable, and it's heartbreaking to see.
There was a dad that was in the event that had 2 little boys who were about 5 years old from the looks of it. And he tried to leave the event when the concert really kicked up, probably to like protect their ears or something. And the cops one of the cops had to take his other son because the mob was so aggressive and closing in around this 5-year-old boy that the cop had to swoop him up so he didn't get crushed. They were shouting F the police while the cop was saving the 5-year-old they almost crushed. They're definitely on the wrong side of history, but personally, I consider Trantifa to be like a domestic, decentralized terrorist organization. They mask themselves and cover up all their identity in order to commit violent crimes, to intimidate, stalk, and harass Americans who are basically expressing their free speech. The Riley Gaines event where I attended.
Not just basically, they are. I mean, this is
Yeah,
protected free speech. This is
literally.
allowed in every way. It was permitted. They had every right to be there, and
Yeah.
it's not like they're specifically targeting a group of people. It is like the idea that our kids are being targeted is what they were protesting. And like
you know
it was
that
don't mess with our kids.
Did you know that the original event that the prayer rattle on Tuesday was about, they originally tried to do that in a different location. They didn't want to do it in the gay neighborhood. The city told them to do it in Cal Anderson, and they made them go to Cal Anderson. They wanted to do it around Pike's Place, well away from the gay neighborhood. And the city made them do their concert that was against transitioning children. And there are two political stances that were so controversial for Antifa, were against child sex trafficking and against transitioning children. And that's some kind of hate speech to Antifa, to the point where they had to break that event up with violence. The city put them in the gay neighborhood, almost like the city wanted that to happen. And then when they did the prayer rattle on City Hall's steps, the mayor said, "We don't have enough police officers to protect you." So they hired private security. The churches hired private security. But that's the situation. The mayor told Christian families that they couldn't protect them on the steps of City Hall from Trantifa, and they couldn't. If they hadn't had private security, nobody would have been able to get in and out of that place safe.
Do you know the owner? I believe his name is. Hang on a second. I had it written down. But the owner of the event that originally took place on Saturday, which was, I think it's something Johnson. Let's see, Russell Johnson. If you have any kind of contact with him or the ability to contact him, I would like to speak to him, because in all reality, there were circumstances that made this appear, like you said, like a setup, and they almost encouraged and wanted this to happen by redirecting them away from Pike Place into Cal Anderson Park, which, if you guys don't know, that's where Chaz was, correct? The Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone.
Yeah, that's the heart of Antifa, and it's the gay neighborhood of Seattle.
So, and this is also another issue that you had brought up with them attaching the T to this, because in all reality, it sure seems like being against human trafficking and being against transitioning of children, it should be a fairly neutral stance. Like this, across the aisle, it should be.
You want to know why it's crazy a neutral stance for the gay community? 80% of gay kids that experience gender dysphoria, gender confusion, desist as they go through puberty. Desistance is the term.
I think it's higher than 80%. I think it's like 94.
It's 80% based on the Zucker studies, and literally that's 80% of them will grow out of it. Desist is the medical term for grow out of it. So if you interrupt them at 13, that's a potential castrated gay man you're making, and another me. That's a potential ruined lesbian. And that they will literally grow out of it 8 out of 10 times. And the other 20% literally just need help. They don't need to be guided into a path of medicalization for life. But they're doing this because there's so much money to be made. They've already made like $500,000 off of doing this to me. They'll make another $1 million or $2 million before I die.
This really breaks my heart. You know, one of the things that I've said in the past about this gender affirming care is that, like back in the day, if you look at like the Aztecs, right? The Native Americans that were on this continent before the Europeans even came over. One of the things that they used to do was human sacrifice. They would sacrifice captured like prisoners of war. They would, and some people would voluntarily sacrifice. And I honestly believe that their sacrifices to the various gods that they honored, it was more humane than what we're doing to children right now through gender affirming care, because at least they would fully sacrifice the body, mind, and soul to something that they believed in, right? In these cases, they are sacrificing the spirit of the child, and they're mutilating the body to live on for the rest of their life, castrated and with constant infections or brittle bones or potentially cancer growing up. And I mean, they rob them of ever experiencing orgasms because of the way that they mutilate their hormones and genitals. I mean, it seems so overtly destructive that it doesn't feel like it should be even a discussion in any way, shape, or form on how it should be allowed. Because these people live on, and they're confused, they're disoriented with how to look at the world, even because they never got to be the person that they were supposed to be. They were never allowed to grow into who they were meant to be.
I got told by an Antifa member at the Riley Gaines event that if I was going to detransition, I should pick a shirt other than pink. I told him, I was like, I'm a gay man. I can wear pink. Fuck off. You know, like that.
You don't even have to be gay to wear pink.
You don't have to be gay to wear pink, but like the way they look at the world, like in order for me to go back to being a man, which I never stopped being a man because a man can't become a woman. Apparently, in order to go back to being a man, I got to stop wearing pink shirts. What?
Well, imagine
straight as fuck.
Imagine saying that you should be castrated because as a child you wanted to wear the color pink when you're a boy. That's insane.
Right.
That I mean, first of all, kids don't make good decisions, period.
No.
They don't. It's just the way it is. They don't have any life experience. They don't have the cognitive ability to see in the future. That's why we don't allow kids to get tattoos. I wasn't allowed to drink caffeine until I was like 16 or 17 years old, is when my parents were finally like, okay, I guess you can have caffeine now because I can't stop you. You can just drive and pick up energy drinks, right? But I wasn't allowed to drink caffeine because they told me, my parents told me it'll stunt your growth. Yet now at 13 years old, and with the way Washington has set up the medical facilities, they actually integrate them into the schools now. So a child can go to public school, be groomed by a teacher, and then be sent to the nurse's office and receive gender affirming care without the parents ever knowing about it.
Right. Yeah. You know what's crazy? You know, like this whole process has been so streamlined. And when you actually know why it was streamlined, it's even more disturbing. Because the reason it was streamlined like this is because it didn't work. It didn't work when they transitioned people older. They were unhappy. They were miserable. They were still it didn't work. It didn't work when they transitioned me. I was just a little bit younger. 17, 18, 19 were my early years, right? Still unhappy, still didn't work. And it's not because I didn't end up okay. Like, I got a husband, I got a Tiffany on my finger, we're well off. I've got 2 dogs, the white picket fence, everything a gay man could want. But I'm a gay man and they lied to me, so it didn't work. And the same thing when you go younger, it's not going to work. They're going to be prettier. They're going to have a lot more health issues and it's still not going to work. And all they're doing is they're experimenting with children. Now they're taking a system that did not work with adults. It didn't work with 35-year-olds. It didn't work with 25-year-olds. It didn't work with 18, 17, 16-year-olds. So now they're jumping it into like 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds. And it's still not going to work.
What kind of backlash have you faced for speaking about detransitioning? I don't even know if I like that term because you never were able to transition.
Leaving the cult, right? Is what I call it.
Leaving the cult. Well, that's a good way to put it. But what kind of backlash have you faced? Because it seems like the only thing that is promoted in our culture today by large companies or by the accepted verbal or the accepted rhetoric among social media, whether it be Facebook or even X or, whatever it may be. It seems like the only thing acceptable is about the successful transitions and how great it is, how euphoric it is to transition. And anybody who speaks out against it or says that, hey, this treatment did not work and it will not work for anybody ever because it's like surface level changes that has deep ramifications to your health, not only physically but mentally. What kind of backlash have you faced for coming out and speaking against this? Because I know that I wish that somebody like you would get hundreds of thousands of followers. And I hope that you guys all watching this right now will share this and help spread the word for someone such as Ari speaking out against this, because there are ramifications for going against the grain in this way. And I mean, it's not just, he's not just speaking out for himself. I mean, there's thousands of children right now being indoctrinated into this that have never seen a downside to it, and it's never brought up, and it is shadow banned. It is basically taboo in any way to speak against this. So please let me know, what kind of backlash have you actually faced by coming out and speaking the way that you do?
I started talking online a year and a half ago. I went public in the real world on May 6th. In the time between a year and a half ago and May 6th, I've been blackmailed by trans people over 12 times. I've had images of me dug up. I had my legal name doxxed. I literally nothing but blackmail and hazing for a year and a half. I went public. Death threats rolled in by the dozens a day. From ever since May 6th, nothing but death threats. Ever since I showed up on Tuesday, my full legal name was doxxed, my birth name was doxxed, my address was doxxed. Somebody who hates me, I guess, because of what I'm saying, has paid a bot army to post my full address under every single post I make on Twitter. They're posting my address under my posts. They're posting my address under my friends' posts, all of my TERF friends, the impacted women who call themselves radical feminists, who exclude trans people, who are organizing around sex-separated spaces and women's rights. All of the ones who support me are having my address posted under their posts. They have completely targeted me in this state. I cannot leave my house without a firearm on my waist. I've taken to wearing a vest under my suits. It is a big problem. I had to put cameras up all over my house. I'm expecting them to show up at my house. My address is everywhere now. There's at least 6 different Reddit threads talking about me on trans forums. You can go search Transphobo1 Anna D Trans. You'll come up with results. And a lot of them are very violent. I'm very heavily armed. I've always been, really big on my 2A rights. So, I mean, if they show up, it's not going to be pretty. I'm thinking they're probably going to try to swat me first. I had to call the police, let them know that this is probably coming, because I saw some threats on Reddit, let's swat this guy. That's the situation. I mean, I'm talking to conservatives, so the next protest I go to, I have some other men with me who are not castrated and 5'5" at 130 pounds.
Well, I'll get you my number as well, and you can always message me and reach out to me. I know that I live a fair distance away from you, but the next protest you go to, I would like to actually attend it as well, and
Cool.
and have your back, because I think that your voice is incredibly important, and the way that you, in spite of all of these threats, the way that you're still courageous enough to say the truth is desperately needed in a time such as now. It really is.
You know why I did it?
Why is that?
Because there are a lot of people in Washington State who are hurt just as much as I am. And they're scared to speak out, and they're not in a position to say it because they can't take what's happening to me right now. I've got a husband. I've got a well-off life. I can afford to lose my job. I'm going to lose my job for this. I'm going to have to find a new job probably pretty soon because of this. But not everybody can do that. That doesn't mean they don't exist. I have multiple friends in this state who were castrated as children, who are detrans, who would like to speak out, but they can't because the backlash that comes, because you lose your job, you lose your income, you get doxxed, you have people become violent towards you. That's why if we're really going to end this state that we're in, this state of harming children, indoctrinating them, of ruining the reputation of the gay community, because the reputation of the gay community is in the gutter now because of this. We're going to need to build up the political power to allow these people to come forward and speak. Because right now our state is being run by a liberal leadership that doesn't care to do anything about this decentralized terrorist organization that's walking around in Seattle.
Yeah, Unfortunately, I agree. I mean, this the way that our state has handled the idea of castrating children for the sake of temporary mental affirmation of an idea that they have that was put in their head. It's not even that it's not like they came up with this idea naturally, and because at 12, 13 years old, generally kids do what they're taught and what they're allowed. And if you teach them that everything that they're, puberty that they're going through is because of this idea that they're a woman when they're a boy, then they will inevitably go down that road, especially when they lay out the red carpet and say, hey, come this way and we'll help you along the way. We'll fix all of your problems. And instead it ends up, as you being in your 30s now, you came to the realization that, okay, this is a false worldview. I was tricked into this by adults who have given me a false worldview. And I think that they're like the organization that I'm with, right, is Hetero Awesomeness Incorporated. And we're trying to change Pride Month entirely. A lot of the things that I promote on my platform is getting married. And I personally believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, in a unity under God, and that you should have children. They robbed you from the ability to even have children. And I mean, I don't know how there can't be compensation for that in some way, how you can't go back and say, this, because men are supposed to be able to bear children or to fertilize women basically their entire lives. And just the fact that so many people now are being castrated at a young age, and having that idea or that possibility robbed from them is catastrophic. But I don't understand how there isn't more backlash to this, or how can we change that? How can we stop that from happening? And
We need to expand the statute of limitations for medical malpractice and for harm in the medical industry. It's 2 to 3 years based on the state right now. 2 to 3 years. That's how long you have to sue from the moment you realize that you were harmed. And it's not a long time. It's not long. It's so short that someone who had their breasts removed at 13 won't be able to seek justice at 17. That's the problem. Nobody.
Okay.
If we could sue, if the statute of limitations didn't tie up detrans hands, because the average time for regret is 8 years. 8 years. The average time for regret is almost 3 times the average statute of limitations. So by the time the average person regrets it, they're well outside the range of the statute of limitations.
How can they make permanent changes to your body and you have 2 to 3 years to sue for it? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Well, maybe this. I mean, that's definitely something that I want to work towards, because I've racked my brain trying to talk with so many people about, and to be honest, I get tired of talking to only people who agree with me when I bring up topics like this, or people who are completely unaware of this situation, because to me it feels like there's just so many young people who have no protections in any way, shape, or form, whether it be by law or compensation after they were targeted as a young adult or as a child. I mean, 13 years old through 17, that's a child. 18 is technically an adult. But I mean, they've changed it to where you can't even buy cigarettes or tobacco in general until you're 21. So, if you expand that out to 21, where they now consider you can buy alcohol and you can buy tobacco, it's like that age group has been the main focus, main target. And it almost feels like they do this to make permanent customers, because you're less likely to backtrack if you have no ability to reverse the changes that were made to you.
Right. It's called sunk cost fallacy. So and there's some other things they do too. They teach you that the consequence of not taking the medicine is suicide. Right. So if you go back to what WAPATH is, the organization that sets the guidelines for transitioning. It was based on the Henry Benjamin standards. If you go back to the Henry Benjamin standards, this is all the way back to like the 50s, what you'll find is only one demographic of trans-identified people even had a symptom of suicidal ideation, right? So you had one, type 2, type 3, all the way up to 6. The only group that had suicidal ideation was type 6, and these weren't equal parts. The lower type was the biggest, and it got smaller and smaller as you went up the ladder. The number of people who were in type 6 are just the ones who want SRS badly enough to go through, flay, remove, and invert your genitals, right? That's 4% of trans-identified males. So if we look at trans history, what we can see is that the suicidal ideation was 4% in the 1950s. Now it's over 60%. And that's because suicide is contagious. If you tell someone that they're at risk of suicide, you put them at risk of suicide. That's why we don't talk about suicide with kids, because it spreads. It's a thought that circles in your head, and it forms an obsessive thought pattern, and it becomes an intrusive thought. So when you tell a child that all of your problems are because of gender, the only solution is to medicalize. And if you don't, you're at risk of suicide. One, you're generating that risk. You're putting
and not only that, they
problems on gender, and they're going to keep medicalizing because they think they'll kill themselves if they don't.
And not just that, they demonize people like me in their eyes by saying that people like me are denying their existence and genociding them, right? Like that's a term that it's been used more than once around me. Is basically saying that I hate all trans people and that I'm genociding them. I don't really understand it, but they dehumanize people like me who can help bring them back to reality, and so they're limiting their options and basically saying it's either suicide or you listen to me, which is evil. I mean, that's the only way that I can really think to put it. That is evil to tell a child that.
Yeah, no, it's evil. And it's funny that they think that they're being genocided. Meanwhile, they have all the social power in our society right now. Like literally, like there's states that are ruling that it's a hate crime to misgender someone. Like you're supposed to tell that this person identifies as a fairy and wants to go by Faye Fair because they have too many piercings and bad hairstyles. Like, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's getting to this point where our society is being completely co-opted, and you can't really question it at all. As soon as you question it, you're losing your job. You're a bigot. You're a monster. You're killing trans people. You're genociding them. But really, they have all the power. They have had all the power up until recently. They've had all the power. That's why I voted for Trump, because he gave me a wish list on trans issues. You know what he did? First president in my lifetime to give me a wish list that I was like, I want all of that. And then he did all of that. First time that's ever happened in my life.
Wow. And isn't that funny how as a gay man you can come out and say that you voted for Trump for
trans issues.
Yeah, for trans issues.
Stop. Because trans is a form of anti-gay eugenics. That's what it is. It's castrating all the gay people. It's also castrating all the autistic people. Like really, people think that this is such a progressive, great notion. But if you look at who's hurt, survivors, autistic people, gay people, and my friend, I'm going to introduce you to him later. He's also a detransitioner, and he's a straight man who was castrated by this ideology at 16, and he'll never be able to have kids now. And he would be able to have kids because he likes women. So the harm is exponential. But anybody who's gay should recognize that this is hurting the gay community. It's hurting the gay community in more ways than just tying the gay community to fetish. It's hurting the gay community in the sense that it's castrating young kids who might grow up to be gay, who might grow up and not have to live this way and ruin their bodies. Well,
I would say that it harms more than just the gay community too, because the way that they've kind of morphed this LGBTQ movement is it's become about anything straying from traditional, like you want to have like like what you said earlier, where you said it's anti-traditional. So
Yeah.
anything that strays from you want to get married in a church to a woman and be I don't know why I'm blanking on the term.
Because the
You want to have
conflict
one partner, one partner for the rest of your life. I don't know why I'm blanking on that term.
That's because what you're describing is traditional American and Western values.
Yeah.
And transgender, as we know today, is a sociological construct that was thought up by transvestites in the 1980s. Okay, so in sociology, a predominant theory is conflict theory. So because transgender is a sociological construct, it's mixed in with queer theory, which is another sociological construct. They've both been heavily tied in to conflict theory. And conflict theory is a brainchild of Marx. And this is how transgender became an anti-Western ideology embedded with Marxism and conflict theory. And so trans is kind of the ultimate conflict theory identity. It's this identity that represents standing against the American traditional family, against Christianity, against capitalism, against everything that the communists hate. This is why so many of them have become commies. This is why so many of them are Marxists or socialists. It's literally a conflict theory driven identity that is slowly dismantling our country. It's certainly dismantling safety for women. Women are now forced to share bathrooms with men who have a higher rate of criminal violence than normal men because they're AGPs. Trans identified males, trans women, people think that, oh, they have a lower rate of violence because they're castrated. They actually have a higher rate of violence than normal men. And in 26% of rapists, they found autogynephilia. 26% of rapists had autogynephilia, which is 92.5% of trans-identified males. So 9/10 of trans-identified males have the ideology of autogynephilia. 26% of rapists are AGP. 28% of pedophiles in another study were found to have AGP. This is a problem. We are allowing these men free reign with society. They are not safe. They are not.
Well, and
They're not the effeminate gay boy who's not going to hurt women. Like the majority of them are straight or bisexual men who have a fetish for being a woman, and we're letting them into female spaces.
we know that porn affects the mind in negative ways. And do you think that with I guess porn being so available on the internet to anybody who has access to the internet, do you think that has some influence on the development of children and being more likely to join this LGBTQ movement because they were exposed to porn at such a young age?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We also have the internet now, which puts it directly into people's laps, right? And then we have something that we didn't have in the 1950s. We have excessive amounts of tranny porn. And, in sexology, like this would be called a hyperstimulus. It is abnormal. It's phantasmal. It's not something natural. It's de facto paraphilic. You are it's like looking at videos of spanking or people being tied up or crazy sex stuff for you to look and go and get off to a tranny. It is exotic, and that is going to impact you mentally. A lot of men watch too much tranny porn, watch too much sissy porn, and then make the decision to go transition. A lot of them, especially
So it's like a learned fetish.
Yeah. Yeah. They're being exposed to a hypersexualized environment that causes them to chase further and further stimuli until eventually they run into she-males, and then that triggers the development of autogynephilia.
Wow. And so
Any perp would say the same thing.
And the main problem with this is not the adults watching porn, is the fact that children are now being exposed to a lot of this stuff, and the way that it's targeted. Because I remember seeing a study come out, or maybe it wasn't a study. It was an ex-Pornhub employee doing an interview, and he was saying how they intentionally will gay bait
with trannies.
Yes, with trannies, and how they intentionally try to lead their customers down that road.
Because it opens them up into a new market of porn that they can sell them, one that's very paraphilic. Exactly. Pornhub does this, in regards to kids. Something that we haven't really touched on is anime. So in Japan,
Oh yes.
very different country in Japan, they didn't get rid of CP, child, you know, until 2014. It was legal. It wasn't even decriminalized. And their age of consent is like lower than 16. They've bumped it up recently to 16, but it was lower than 16 up until like very recently, right? And so
Wow.
they
I
they
didn't know
changed
that.
their obscenity laws in 2014. They started censoring a lot of the porn. They criminalized CP. And that's when the cartoon porn, the hentai, became filled with CP and all of these like little drawn girls having that kind of stuff. That stuff gets into America with no filter. We don't have regulations on that stuff. And we don't have regulation on the non pornographic anime. We are getting a lot more gender bending anime. We're getting animes where girls get magically turned into boys and boys get magically turned into girls. We're getting anime where they draw a character that looks like a 6-year-old and they write out this story to justify it. She's a 3,000-year-old vampire or a warlock and her body just looks sex. And then they spin out a romance with an adult-like or a late teenager character. And kids are watching this stuff. They're normalizing like extreme relationship gaps in these animes. They're normalizing cross-gender things. And the thing is like for someone who's young and developing, all it really takes is putting this idea in their head that they can change their gender, their sex, and they might start thinking about it seriously. It might become a cyclical thought. Like we really need to update our regulations to protect American children from the influence of media made in foreign countries who do not have values that align with ours. That is definitely feeding this.
Also, get your child a flip phone with no access to the internet. That needs to come back.
Yes.
That needs to make a huge comeback.
Huge.
Wow.
One of your commenters mentioned Demon Hunter. Yeah, Demon Hunter is a great example.
I don't know what that is, but
it's something you shouldn't let your kids watch, but the kids can absolutely watch it because it's on a child cartoon site. There's a lot of this imagery that's like not directly explicit, but it's putting the idea in their head. It's spinning out the themes. And I think it should be banned for everybody. I know that like a real child isn't being hurt when you draw this, but it's nasty, it's immoral, and it's like giving them an outlet, right? So with paraphilia, like pedophilia is a paraphilia, right? With paraphilia, it's let's talk about something that's not that. Let's talk about something that's less disturbing but still gross. People who like feet, right? Somebody likes feet, that's their thing. If you do that every single time, you're going to become desensitized to it, kind of like a drug, right?
Yeah.
So when we put this imagery out there in anime that's touching on it, that's allowing them to express that, they're desensitizing themselves. It's increasing the likelihood that someone's going to offend. Like giving a pedophile a doll or something that they can express through is increasing the likelihood that they're going to offend. And the maps right now are lobbying for that. They're lobbying under this notion that there is such a thing as a virtuous pedophile, which is this thing that they're pushing. They have sexologists doing meetings in Europe and in America where they talk about virtuous pedophiles who are pedophiles who haven't offended yet. And these people are advocating for them to have forms to express it, dude.
I didn't know that this was a thing, but that sounds horrible.
I can send you some links to some of these webinars and stuff on pedophilia where they're trying to normalize it. They're trying to talk about them being virtuous if they don't offend and give them outlets for it. I'll send you some links after the show.
I mean, that needs to be expunged from society, period. Like, end of story. There should, I mean, if we're going to castrate anybody, that's who I would recommend castrating.
Well, I say wood chipper because, there's actually data on this too. Ready? Here's the data on this. So you can castrate a pedophile, but if they reoffend after being castrated, because they've been castrated, they are much more violent. much
Really?
more violent.
Do you
because
think
they
it's like a
can't
buildup of
stop.
sexual frustration?
They can't stop. They can't get off. There's nothing to it but power and sadism at that
Oh,
point.
yikes.
And that's just like
Okay.
Miyazaki, the Rat Man. If you look up Miyazaki, the Rat Man in Japan, he had deformations and he couldn't get off. This man literally assaulted children, butchered them, and ate them because he couldn't. Uh-huh. So like you take it to the next
Well,
level when you castrate a pedophile. As far
hmm.
as I'm concerned, it's jail for life or a wood chipper.
Millstones is what the Bible says. And
Millstones,
how to
exactly.
handle it. So maybe that's why it does say that, because a lot of people have advocated for, like, a first offender be castrated and things like of that nature. But with the Bible saying that, for whoever harms children, it be better for them to be attached to a millstone. Maybe that's wise, because there's no proper way of fixing this kind of sickness, and
Right.
it has to be expunged from society. It cannot be allowed.
Exactly.
That's interesting. Really, really interesting,
Sorry to
because
go
I've
too
never
too
really thought
radical
about
with
it that
your
way. But
show. I'm a little radical when it comes to those people for obvious reasons.
yeah, and as you should be. And there's no excuse to. I mean, I know that we have free speech, but there's no such thing as a virtuous pedophile. There never will be. That
there's
it is a sickness that has to be dealt with immediately and expunged from society, because as a society, you cannot have maps. There's no way to coexist with them in a safe manner that is safe for your children or anybody else's children for that matter. So, I mean, on that point, I 100% agree with you. So, that needs to be dealt with. But
When we talk about young or old, just one more thing I wanted to share with you. When we talk about like, well, it's wrong for kids, but it's fine for adults, for transitioning and medicalization. I want to reiterate this analogy. Like if you had an anorexic, so you had an anorexic girl and you're a doctor, she's 90 pounds, she's Eugene Cooley. Eugene Cooley is standing in front of you. She says she's fat and she wants liposuction. Are you going to do it? Is it moral to do it?
no,
Eugene Cooley? No, it's not. It's not moral to tell a mentally unwell adult, yeah, you know what? You do have a woman's brain. Let me invert your penis and flay it for you.
yeah, this affirmation of something that can never be realized, or the idea, in fact, that a man has a woman's brain it's a fairly new idea that can never be proven. It's one of those ideas, and that's why it's like a dogmatic zealot belief, is they're trying to will it into existence, and are constantly having to reaffirm it from all these other people. And this is why one of the reasons why they have to get this affirmation is because in their mind and in reality, it will never be affirmed. It cannot be affirmed. And so it has to come from other people. That's why there's this social cult-like group where you have to constantly affirm each other. And you definitely look like a woman. Yeah, you're definitely on your way there. Good job. But because it's not possible to ever actually achieve that.
Right. And you don't change the hardware to fix a software problem. That's first. You don't change the hardware to fix a software problem. And two, it's not a path to mental stability to require society to affirm your delusion for you to hold it together. Like if you that's not, we don't do that with anything else. If a schizophrenic thinks they're a lion, we don't then go ask society to tell the schizophrenic that they're a lion so they don't melt down. But we're doing that with men and women who think that they're the opposite sex. We're saying, okay, everybody needs to respect the crazy person's delusion or they're gonna melt down, and if they melt down, it's your fault. No, it's the crazy person's fault.
Well said. I mean, I have a 2-year-old, and when he doesn't get his way, he just recently started throwing fits at times. He's only done it a couple of times, but the solution to fixing that problem isn't that I give him what he wants. It is to let him know that the fit isn't going to work, and that he's going to have to be able to work through the emotions that he's feeling at the time. I mean, it is literally the same. That same idea expands to adults who want you to go along with their delusion. Right. If everybody enables that behavior, then it will continue.
Exactly.
But if everybody stops and just says, okay, let's get back to reality here, there's no such thing as a man ever becoming a woman or a woman ever becoming a man. So that we have to figure out the proper boundaries in order to still acknowledge reality. But I mean, it is just crazy for me to see that,
And, it comes from love, though. It comes from love. This idea that you have, it's not hate. You said they called you hateful. This isn't hate. Like wanting people to be able to accept what they are, wanting them not to exist in a state of delusion, where they can never be happy because they're pursuing something they can never have. Wanting people not to be indoctrinated into a cult that lies to them. Those aren't hateful things.
that's true. I mean, one of the first things when I met my wife and how I realized that we were going to get along and last a long time is that when we would argue or have an issue with each other, we were actually able to go through that conflict and not assume that the other person was being malevolent at the time, right? Like we were able to discuss issues that we had with each other. It was necessary conflict that we had to go through in order to come out on the other side better. And a lot of people are too afraid to go through that necessary conflict because, and I mean, it's something that I learned. I married my high school sweetheart initially, like right after high school, we had a kid out of wedlock, and then we got married for a short, like 8 months. And one of the main reasons why that marriage fell apart was because I never stood up for myself. I wanted to be like the people pleaser, right? And I never actually gave my opinion or voiced my opinion. I didn't know how to lead my family at the time. And so what inevitably happened is I built up a lot of resentment in my heart, and so did she. She didn't have the respect that she should have had for me. And so the entire family structure just completely fell apart. And it was never going to work with that happening. And it seems like today in our society at large, instead of going through that necessary conflict that we have to go through to acknowledge reality and acknowledge the problems that we are facing as a people, it seems like a lot of people are just advocating for us to just shove those feelings down, not accept them, and keep having these this ideology, these radical zealots just continue to be affirmed at every turn, no matter what they say. It always has to be affirmed in that way. And I think as a society, somebody like you is one of the first steps at actually acknowledging that reality and bringing people back to sanity and giving them the courage to speak out against this ideology that has been sweeping over our country and actually the world, but our country in particular is what I've been advocating for. So Ari, I really want to thank you for coming on today. You have been, your journey so far is inspiring, and I really appreciate you standing up and showing that it does take courage, it does take strength to face these people coming after you for speaking out the way you do. But I admire your courage, and I admire your resilience in your story. I would like to have you back on again at some point, and I hope that you continue down this road and that it gets a little bit easier for you. But I hope that I can help spread your voice as far as I possibly can, because a voice like yours is necessary in today's day and age.
I appreciate that. Is it okay if I send you Layla's fundraiser so maybe you could share it with your viewers? She's
Yeah, absolutely.
Had a double mastectomy that couldn't get justice.
Absolutely, send it over, and I'll share it out. You guys, we will, if you can. I'll post on my X page and underneath the comments here, in the first comment. So yeah, share it with me, and I'll post it out. And thank you again for coming on. This has been great, and learning about I guess the way that children are targeted and what it takes to actually fight back against it is difficult. And so I hope we can encourage and find more people to join the side of reality and truth and actual love and compassion. Because it is not compassionate to lie to somebody and say that they can change genders. It is not compassionate to say that their problems will be fixed if only they go through the surgery or if only they take these hormones. No, love is based in truth. and we have to tell the truth to these young kids, and we have to tell the truth when we are, whether it be announcers for a sports event, or if you are a referee or some kind of adult in a sports event for these high schools that are just going along with these men trampling all over women's sports. I mean, it needs to start with every adult who can have courage to actually stop this nonsense from happening at the beginning. And we need to stop enabling this behavior that is permanently affecting young men and women of our country. I mean, they're our future. Our children are our future. That's the only way that we will continue as a civilization, if we procreate, have kids, and raise them to be good people. So I'm hoping that this conversation can help a lot of people be inspired to stand up and speak out.
Awesome. Thanks for having me,
Well,
man.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
I popped that link in your private chat. Check out the Apostates table on YouTube, and please donate to Layla if you can. Help her. A couple bucks goes a long way to giving her back her body.
Absolutely, you guys. And please, once again, share this podcast. I will see you guys tomorrow on the Cowboys and Indians podcast on the Patriots Prayer Network. It should be 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Ari, until next time, thank you for coming on.
My people of this country, and we're under attack. They banning us, they cancel us for speaking the facts. If you man enough.
This is the Patriots Prayer Podcast. It's a tremendous show, one of the greatest shows in the history of the world.
This is Bryson Gray, and you are watching the Patriots Prayer.
PTN, you're doing the right thing.
On the Patriots Prayer Network. Thank you all.
PPN on your bumper.
I'm Tom McDonald. This is the Patriot Prayers Network. Check it out. Lots of good TV. Lots of cool people.
America great again.
Tune in.
You a
Keep it
clown,
locked.
better know where I stand. I'm the white boy with the middle fingers in the air, dog. We don't give a what. 100 white boys gonna hold me down anywhere, dog. We think that you suck. My Patriots, the craziest. They ain't afraid of breaking fists on faces. If you really wanna taste of this, no safety tip. The same mistake and spray the clip. I pray you miss, cause if you don't, they gon' go wacko. Automatic gun smoke like tobacco. Never hit a lady, but it's pretty hard to tell if you're a girl or a they, them, there's these, that, those. I ain't never gonna take a knee for the anthem. Smack 'em. I don't give a damn, can't stand 'em. Gang full of randoms, fan with a handgun. Run up in your mansion, leave it all abandoned. I was raised to be brave to the grave. United States, we love the country that they've been corrupting. Go woke and go broker if you ain't obeyed. My people of this country, and we're under attack. They banning us, they cancel us for speaking the facts. If you man enough, come stand with us, take USA back. And every time we pull up, all you're gonna see is America.